In my last video, I pulled out the Ej25 motor from my 2010 Legacy GT. The car had a cylinder 3 misfire, and after a compression test, it showed there was no compression in cylinder 3. So at this point, I know the issue is coming from somewhere inside the engine, and in this video, we're going to disassemble the motor, remove the heads from the bottom end, and try to find what's causing the issue. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the charge pipe here, and then after that, I'm going to remove the intake manifold. I haven't been able to find really great instructions on how to remove this intake manifold. So I do know there's a couple bolts around here that hold it in, and some on this side, that's why I have to take this manifold off. I think this fuel plate may also be in the way. There's a bunch of lines for fuel and other things that run under the intake manifold here too. And I think some of it is attached to the manifold itself. So I'm gonna kind of just get started and try to find my way around and figure out how to get this thing off pretty much on my own without that much instruction. So bear with me, guys. Alright, there's a little fuel line connector here that has to be undone because it's in the way of one of the bolts, and then I have to get a smaller tool here to fit to get that other side out. I should also mention, I put this on a little swivel here, makes it a little easier accessing some of these bolts. Now I need my magnet. Alright, so when I give this thing a wiggle, looks like these fuel rails are attached. So that shit'll have to be disconnected. Alright, so back here, looks like this line will have to be disconnected. This line will have to be disconnected. This line will need to be disconnected. These two lines need to be disconnected. And I've already disconnected the same lines on this side. In addition, it also looks like these fuel lines go to the fuel rail and the injectors. So I'm also going to have to remove these plates and disconnect the injectors and fuel rail. Now to get this shield off, there's one more in the front here that's really a pain. So you have to remove this piece, which I think there's a bolt up here, which you can't really see, and a bolt back there. This comes forward, and then with this out of the way, you can access the bolt right there behind that solid line to remove this plate, and I think this bolt and this bolt also needs to be removed. Alright, right here there's a little thumb thing that you just press to disconnect this guy. Pull it out, and you have access to this bolt. So I have a ratcheting wrench here, and I made the mistake of using this, but what happens is when you back it out, it'll get stuck against this. So don't use a ratcheting wrench, use just an open wrench when removing this guy. So also, just so that this has a little more clearance when you take it out, I actually shortened this front bolt the last time I took it out. So a little pro tip there. Alright, so next I'm going to disconnect those 2 bolts that are marked red. I'm going to disconnect the connector for the fuel injector here on each side. And then when this is ready to be pulled, this whole thing should just come up. Injectors, rail, and all. So that's all nice and loose now. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so I actually already took all the bolts off for this shield earlier in the video when I was trying to remove, I think the AC pump was here. So there's actually only 1 bolt remaining. It's this one, and it's really hard to access when the motor's in the car, so I think I'm actually not gonna put this one back when I reassemble the engine. Looks like everything's pretty much disconnected. This one pretty much wants to come out, except some of these fucking connectors here. So I think I have to separate the harness to get this shit out. So I think I have to disconnect all this stuff. Either that or possibly disconnect it from the line, but I'm running out of time today, so that's where I'm gonna leave it. When I come back, I'm gonna disconnect all the wiring and all the connectors, and then hopefully this intake manifold will be ready to come out. Wiring on this side is disconnected. Now for the other side. So I have to disconnect this guy here. I'm gonna try to do all this one-handed. I forgot my tripod. So you guys can see there's a big oil leak too. So if you guys have been watching my vlog for a while, when I replaced the gasket here, I snapped this bolt. So I'm gonna see if I can extract that actually at some point during this job. Looks like this one goes here. Looks like this one, this line I can actually just disconnect here. There's a connector here hiding from me. Looks like the harness on this side is free. Alright, looks like there's also this air line that's connected back here. And then there's also one more electrical connector back here. I don't know if you guys can really see that, but it's pretty obvious. So I'm gonna disconnect those 2 things and see if that allows this thing to come out. Okay, so it's actually not this connector, it's the big connectors here. Still attached to this mount here. I'm either gonna disconnect these, or maybe I'll just take these 2 bolts off, and this whole thing should hopefully just come out, maybe. I'm lucky. Looks like there might be another line here. I don't know. Yeah, so this line here needs to be disconnected. And then I'll try to disconnect these connectors by just unmounting them. Take the whole bracket off. Looks like there's 2 more connectors up here. So this one, sorry, 3 connectors. These need to be disconnected as well. All right, might need 2 hands for this one. All right, there's another hose here that needs to be disconnected as well. Aha! Free at last, free at last. Okay guys, so My camera died, so I had to switch over to my phone. Sorry if the quality is not as good here. Now that I have the intake manifold off, I'm gonna be taking off, I think these are called the TGVs. So these will come out. I think it's just these 4 bolts. I can't do it one-handed. The torque is too high. Let me crack these and then I'll come back. Why am I doing it by hand like this? What am I, an asshole? Shit, I think I'm gonna need a rubber mallet to knock this off. I don't have one. Okay, I'm gonna try to improvise here. I'm gonna wrap this breaker bar in a towel and see if I can use that to knock that thing loose. There we go. It's still stuck. There we go. Boom. I'll probably have to replace that gasket too. But look at that. I can see the valves, it's really dark, so I don't know if you guys can see them. So these ones look good, so it's the other side that actually has the misfire. It's gonna be that cylinder. So let's get those guys off too. All right, so now I can see these valves as well. From what I can see so far, I know you guys can't see it, but it looks like the intake valves are shut and they're closed all the way. So it could be the exhaust valves. I won't really know until I remove the exhaust manifold and then I can run air through the spark plug hole and see where the air escapes from on cylinder 3 here. And hopefully we can get to the bottom of this cylinder 3 misfire. Next thing I want to do is take off these bolts that go around the timing belt cover, get those off so I can access the timing belt, remove the belt so that I can eventually take the head off. Unfortunately, I can't take the belt off today because I don't have the tool right now to hold this pulley in place while I take that bolt off. So I'm just gonna take the cover off. This is so much easier with the engine off the car. All right, there's 2 more there that I'll get off camera. All right, so I'm back and I have the crank pulley holder tool, which I ordered on Amazon. So this will help me hold this pulley in place here while I loosen the crank bolt with a 22 mil, and hopefully this will come off and then I can take this last cover off. There we go, and now the timing belt is exposed. All right, so the next thing I have to do is bring the motor to top dead center. So I put the crank bolt back on so I can spin the motor. And I believe I'm supposed to make this line, this timing mark on the crank sprocket here, line up with this line here. So let's do that now. Oh, I went past a little bit. All right, let me see if I can get this good. All right, so it looks like the lines here are lined up. I'm sorry, there's just a big shadow. So it looks like there's also a timing mark on the gear back there on the sprocket. So these are all lined up. I believe these 2 marks, the double hashes here, are supposed to be completely lined up. This is supposed to be lined up with that. And this is supposed to be lined up with that. These marks are supposed to be lined up. And there's a mark here and here that's supposed to be lined up, but it actually seems like some of these are actually off by a tooth. So initially when the engine was having the misfire, a friend of mine actually took this apart to check the timing. Me and him have never done timing belts before, so I think when we reassembled it, looks like it's off a tooth from then, and I'm not entirely sure how off it was before that, so that could be what is causing the misfire. It could have bent a valve. As we go further, we'll be able to see what's going on, hopefully. Alright, so the next step is gonna be to loosen the pulleys here and here and the tensioner bolt, and that should allow me to pull the whole belt off, hopefully not cause any more damage to the engine. I'm just winging it here, guys. Like, I'm not a professional mechanic, so thanks for sticking with me. I forgot about these guides here, but you need an Allen key to take them off. I don't know if I have an Allen key here, so. All right, I found the tool, so let's see if I can get this off. The next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drop the turbo and exhaust manifold. So it looks like I just have to disconnect one of these O2 sensor lines from the bracket here, just so it doesn't get stuck on this line here. Actually, I just need to disconnect this line. This looks like coolant feed line. And then I can either disconnect the entire turbo inlet or all the lines going to it. I have to disconnect I believe this is an oil feed line, and then on each side of the manifold itself there's 3 bolts, and this whole thing should drop down. This assembly I know is very heavy. I put this balancer back on and I'm going to reattach to the hoist, lower the engine to the ground, and then disconnect the bolts on the ground so that the assembly doesn't just fall off. Okay, it looks like there's possibly 2 more bolts holding this thing together. One right there. Can't really see it, but there's one there. This one right here. I'm gonna try removing those and see if that fixes the issue. Alright, removing those 2 bolts looks like it did the trick, so let me try this one more time and see if I can get the exhaust manifold and turbo separated from the motor.
Motherfucker, I've been mortified, 45, feeling like a Mordecai. I ain't regular, feel like Jordan wearing 45. Traumatized, victimized, seen some of my niggas die. Knock you off a base with a bat when them niggas slide. Homicide, genocide, televised, emphasize, perpetuating war. Tell that nigga he gon' pick a side. Hood ties from hood.
So now that I have the exhaust manifold off, I'm gonna take the spark plug out of cylinder 3, and then I have a leak down tester here, which I'm gonna hook up to the compressor, and I'm gonna push air through the cylinder via the spark plug hole, and air will hopefully come out either the exhaust side or the intake side, and that will tell me why there's no compression in that cylinder. Should be able to just turn this dial. So this end is hooked up to the compressor tank and this end is hooked up to the motor, and it should push air into the motor as I turn this. There we go. Oh yeah, it's the exhaust. Oh, there's a ton of air coming out the exhaust. Like a lot, and there's no pressure as expected, so it's definitely one of the exhaust valves. So I tried to turn the motor earlier and there's still a lot of coolant oil and I don't have anything to catch it right now, so I'm not going to flip the motor, but I'm going to try to look underneath here. Alright guys, so looks like the exhaust valves are the issue. Putting the light in there I really couldn't see much. It does smell like gasoline, and that valve is, and this exhaust port is very wet inside. So I think the only way to, investigate further will be to pull the whole head off. So I bought these tools from Company 23. I've got two different ones, one for the exhaust and one for the intake valves. And this pretty much just holds the gear in place so I can try to break the nut off. So we'll see. Alright, I have to stop the video here and tell you guys, do not use this Company 23 tool. The entire internet says that that's the right tool to do this job, and it's not. You gotta use this tool here. This is actually the Subaru recommended Subaru tool to remove the cam gears. And the reason you don't want to use the Company 23 tools, in short, because of the way it holds the cam gear. It essentially holds it on the outside, and when you apply torque to the bolt, which is on the inside part of the cam gear, it essentially breaks a pin on the inside of the cam gear, since it's a variable timing cam gear. So I didn't even know that I broke this part until I was actually ready to reassemble the motor. So from Subaru, the part number for this correct tool is 499977500. This isn't an actual Subaru branded tool, so this is pretty much a replica of the tool, which works fine. It's a CTA 7615 Subaru camshaft sprocket holder is what it's called. I'll put a link in the description so that you guys get the right tool. And this tool only costs about as much as one of those factory 23 tools, so you're spending half the amount of money, and this works on all 4 of your cam gears. We'll see if these tools actually make a difference and are able to help me get these bolts off. Apparently they're supposed to work pretty well. I bought the set for about $100 off of throttle.com. So let's give it a try. The other thing is it's keyed, so there's a certain position here. Damn, it worked. Damn, look at that. I guess when you have the right tools, it comes right off. Alright, so I've got all the cam gears off. I actually have them set on the table over here. So they're all labeled so I can put them exactly back where they came from. Next order of business is going to be to start removing the heads. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually remove the cover, this plastic cover here. So the cam gears actually block some of these bolts here that I have to remove to take the cover off. And then I'll remove the actual valve cover. And then that should give me access to the bolts to remove the head. So yeah, I know there's comments that are gonna say don't stick a screwdriver in here, and you're not really supposed to, but I'm just doing it on the very, very edge where there's already a crack and just using it to split it open a little bit, guys. So, don't have a cow, man. There we go. Alright guys, so here's inside the head. So I'm going to have to remove the cams to access these bolts here so that I can actually separate the head from the engine. And there's a very specific order which you're supposed to release these bolts. There's actually a specific order these outer bolts actually come off in as well. I think the outer bolts aren't as critical, but these bolts and these bolts have to come off very specifically at a very specific torque, and then again when you reassemble them, if you don't use the proper procedure, you actually run the risk of warping the mating surfaces. That fucking strong, huh?
How do they get them in there?
Well, it's the heat cycles that cooks them in there.
Yeah. You trying to do this by yourself?
So we got all these head bolts loosened here. So I started taking this one off, but this thing's in the way. So I think to remove it, you gotta take these bolts off. You gotta take these bolts off so I can at least back it off enough that just kind of guessing here. I didn't see anything in the directions about this. Alright, so this is kind of the moment of truth here. That should be all that was holding in the motor. I think. Oh. You're supposed to leave like 2 bolts in to kind of keep it from falling off, but I have the motor here at this angle. Woo! Sheesh. That's it.
Fucking do it.
Fucking did it. I already. So if you guys are an old school follower of the vlog, I actually did this valve cover gasket a while ago, and I broke off one of the bolts. So I'm gonna see if I can extract it. Yeah, fucking moves.
You wanna get some better pliers?
I'm just trying not to scratch the surface. This one little bolt is giving me so much anxiety about this engine. Look at that. Bam, 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 focus sucks. Yep, this one little bolt. That's awesome. I'm actually really happy this came out. Alright guys, so I've got the head here and I found the culprit. See that right there? That's a big hole. So it looks like I've got pretty much what's called a burnt valve, where the valve got too hot and a piece of it pretty much broke off. So that broken piece is obviously what's been causing the zero compression, letting the compression out of the cylinder, and that is the whole reason I was having the misfire. So I've already ordered a new valve to replace this. I'm going to take this to the machine shop, have them replace the valve, and then I'm going to have them also deck the head. And I'm going to do both. I'm going to send both sides to be decked to the machine shop. So now knowing this, I've checked the engine oil for metal. I haven't found any. The cylinders, which I'll show you in a second, look pretty good. So I don't think this piece of the valve that blew off ended up inside the motor. I think it blew out the exhaust, since this is an exhaust valve. My next step is I'm going to actually blow open the exhaust manifold and check the turbo and make sure everything there looks sound. If not, I may have to replace the turbo if the piece of valve passed through the turbine. I think this is where I'm going to end today's, no, I just have to show you guys the engine. So this here is cylinder 3. I know the lighting in here isn't great. Everything actually looks really healthy. I didn't find any metal or any pieces of valve in here. Here, I'll turn the motor for you guys. So when I turn the motor, everything moves nice and smoothly, just as it should. So I don't really have any reason to believe that this bottom end is bad, so I'm going to be reusing it. With these 5th gen Legacies, the turbo is directly connected to the exhaust manifold, so I'll do that off camera and do a little inspection and I'll update you guys. So if you want to know what happens next, go ahead, give me a follow. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Alright, I'll see you guys in the next one.